Hello and welcome. In this session, we are going to learn about PostgreSQL in Azure. So these are a couple of basic things that you should know. So we will try to make it very simple. One is IaaS, another is PaaS. One is infrastructure as a service and another is platform as a service. Just for, or if I say in very layman language, I will say if I have a virtual machine and on top of that, if I have to install PostgreSQL, or if I have to install Postgre on a host or on an operating system which is given, and if I have to manage everything starting from the operating system, security, patching, the backup of the database, maintenance of the database, the high availability, in that case, I will say that it is IaaS, infrastructure as a service. If I say platform as a service, in that case, there will be a pre-installed version of PostgreSQL wherein I will not have the access of the operating system, but all the management tasks which are related to the management, like the security, high availability, and stuff like that, they will be taken care by the cloud service provider. In this case, we are talking about the Azure. So if we are talking about the Azure managed PostgreSQL instance, in that case, Azure is going to take care of those things. So we say it is PaaS. Let's move on to the very basic term, which is what is Azure database for PostgreSQL. When we simply say what is Azure database, well, before that, we know that Postgre is world's #1 open source relational database. And in case of Azure, the database which is being used is Community Edition. And when we say Azure database, we say it is a managed instance which is being offered by Azure, and it depending upon your mission critical workload, it can handle it according to the performance. It can have the high availability security. It can scale up according to your requirement. It has automated backup and point in time restore. You can go up to 35 days. This is just the basic about Azure database for PostgreSQL. So one thing is Azure a PaaS PostgreSQL. So in general, when we talk about the Azure as PaaS, we say it is a managed instance, and there will be a pre-installed version of PostgreSQL. But Postgre comes as you can install it on the virtual machine as well in case of Azure, and it is called as IaaS. But when we simply say Azure PostgreSQL, it means we are talking about the managed instance of Postgre in Azure. If we have to say Postgre in Azure on the virtual machine, we mean infrastructure as a service. That means there will be a virtual machine provided to you, and you have to do everything with respect to the Postgre, starting from the installation, maintenance, the high availability, disaster recovery, anything and everything related to the Postgre, you have to manage it. That is known as the IaaS. Who's better, Azure or AWS? Not going to discuss about that, but just put it over here in case you have something where in Microsoft is very strong and they have some propriety over there. It is good to use those. So again, the general term, what is PostgreSQL in Azure? So when we say PostgreSQL in Azure, we mean PaaS, platform as a service. It is fully managed database service which has inbuilt capability. You can use the high availability, you can use the intelligent tool which are available in Azure, you can use all the frameworks which are available. And the basic thing about the Postgre is you don't have to I mean to about the cloud service provider, you don't need to pay anything upfront, and that's what it is all about. Does Azure have PostgreSQL? These are some of the things which are asked. So all the cloud service provider, they do provide PostgreSQL, and this is already answered in the previous slide. And PostgreSQL in Azure, it is doing great. So from here onwards, we will be seeing a lot of demos on PostgreSQL in Azure. So if you talk about the PostgreSQL on Azure VM, so we will say it is infrastructure as a service. And when we talk about moving our legacy application which are logged in the data center to the cloud, it may not be possible for some reason that your instance, PostgreSQL instance, can be upgraded to the latest version. It might be one of the reason, or it may be like the application might not support. That might be one of the case. In that case, what we do the lift and shift, whatever Postgre instance we have in our data center, we the same version we migrate into Azure virtual machines. So it is as good as working in your data center. So you can manage the Postgre SQL in your Azure VM the way you have been working in your on-premises environment. There is hardly anything which is going to change, and you have to manage everything the way you are working in on-premises for PostgreSQL when you use it as infrastructure as a service. So these are some of the common what do you say, the differences when we talk about Postgre in Azure VM and Postgre as platform as a service. When we talk about the SLA of the virtual machines that is being offered, it is 99.99, 4 times 9. If you are using the availability set, if you are using a single virtual machine, the availability is decreased by 0.05 percentage. If you are talking about the managed instance, the single server availability is 99. This is 4 times 9. Flexible server, it is in the preview stage, and there is something called as hyperscale citus, that is when high availability is enabled, it is 99.95%. What about the operating system and the PostgreSQL patching? So when you talk about the infrastructure as a service, you have to manage yourself. When we talk about the platform as a service, in a single server, there will be a single instance. It will be automatically managed by Azure. If it is a flexible server wherein there is some kind of flexibility being given to the customer, so you have automatic with some kind of flexibility given to the customer. And when we talk about the hyperscale, it is automatic. When we talk about the high availability in case of Postgre Azure VM, it is being managed by the administrator. It may be your DBA or the other teams which are involved. But when we talk about the high availability in case of PaaS, then you have, in case of your single server or flexible server or hyperscale, they are available built in. If you talk about the zone redundancy, so Azure VM can be running up to different availability zones. So there is zone of redundancy available the way you have it in your on premises. If the infrastructure is set up like this, the zone redundancy is not there in case of single server, but because it is single. Flexible server, it is available. For hyperscale, it may not be available. The hybrid scenario, it you have to the customer has to manage themselves. When we talk about the platform as a service, then single server, you have the read replicas and flexible. So let's not talk about the flexible, but hyperscale, there is no such. Backup and restore, if you are using the virtual machine, you have to do it yourself. If you are talking about the single server, then the user configuration for local and geo is available, and for hyperscale, it is built in. Disaster recovery, you have to do it yourself, but in case of single server, flexible and citus, it is not available. But for a single server, you have geo redundancy backup and read replicas available. Backup and restore is available in your what do you say, the platform as a service. But in case of virtual machine, you have to do it. Even for the disaster recovery, you have to manage it yourself. In case of single server, it is geo redundancy. You can have the geo read replicas as well. And that's the basics things about what is available and what is not available in infrastructure virtual machine and the managed instance. It all depends upon your choice, and as an administrator, you cannot take a decision unless it is decided by the application, if they have some kind of dependency on the operating system, or in case as an administrator we want more control over the things which are there in PostgreSQL. Because when we talk about the virtual machine or the managed instance, there are few differences which we need to understand. When we talk about the monitoring in case of virtual machines, you have to do it yourself. Maybe you can use the Grafana or any other what do you say, the monitoring tools which are available. You can use some of the tools which are paid one, or the open sources as well. But when we talk about the platform as a service, then a single server or the flexible server or hyperscale, you have the alerting mechanism that can be used in case there is some threshold is attained or it crosses that threshold. You will be getting the alert. When we talk about the threat protection, so customer must build his own protection. But in case of single server, it is already available. When we talk about the disaster recovery, so this already been discussed, so I think this is repeating. This is already discussed. Like managed instance, we have three types: single server, flexible server, and hyperscale, which are Citus. And let's see about some basic detail about the PostgreSQL single server. When we talk about a single server, it is fully managed platform as a service for PostgreSQL. That means there will be a pre-installed version of PostgreSQL, and most of the management which is related to the PostgreSQL maintenance, like availability, security, backup, and patchings, they are automatically taken care by the cloud vendor. In this case, it is Azure. The availability is 99.99% if you are using it in a single availability zone. And what versions it supports? It supports from 9.5 to 11. So you need to understand when you are migrating to the platform as a service or infrastructure as a service, you need to consider the kind of the versions which are supported, and what is the limitations in terms of the size and in the zone wherein you are going to deploy these. So you have to do a case study, then only you can decide if the decision is coming to you only. If we talk about the flexible server, in case of flexible server, some more flexibility is given to the customer, so they can modify the things according to their requirement. You can have the high availability across the multiple zones. You can have the control over the starting and the stopping. You can use the compute tier and bursting as well. So it is like some more flexibility has been given. And in terms of the versions, you have community version 11 and 12. So any Azure PostgreSQL, it comes, when we talk about the managed instance, it comes with the version restriction as well. So as of now, we are in the most stable version and reliable is 13. 14 is already released, but still it is not there. It is going to take some time. If you go to virtual machines or infrastructure as a service, then it is up to you. Whatever you wanted to use, you can go with that. The third one in the series is Citus. So it is a fully managed platform as a service offer. You can deploy it with the horizontal scaling. So this is something which is very good over here. You can use the sharding. You can separate the databases into different partitions. So some sort of NoSQL capabilities has also been tried to be integrated. So you can use the parallelization across multiple hosts, because it's trying to hyperscale the thing. So that's what it is trying to bring in about the Citus. Uh, that's the basic things about the three different managed instances which is being offered by the Azure. And that's all about it. Maybe in next session we will start seeing more and good things about the Azure. We'll start with the deployment, migration, and a lot of things are yet to come. I hope this is going to help, and thank you.